It is officially spring, which means that it's also chick season. And if you're thinking about getting chicks, then you're going to want to stay and listen to the 5 steps that you're going to need to do in order to welcome these new babies into your family. So the first step is actually providing a safe home for them at the beginning. This is kind of like a chick nursery, and this is their brooder. This is where they're going to be living for the first 4 to 5 weeks, if not longer, of their life. So whether you're actually getting chicks from Tractor Supply or a local mill store, you're getting them delivered to you, or you're just picking them up on Facebook Marketplace, or maybe you're growing out some of your own baby chicks from an egg, you're definitely going to need to get their setup ready for them. This means that you're going to want to get a nice brooder box. We end up using either a plastic bin that you can get from Target, Lowe's, Home Depot, anything like that you would use to store any of your stuff in your attic or basement, and you're just going to use that for your brooder. We have a lot of videos on how to build out your brooder, but you can also use any type of large steel bins that animals would use for like a trough type situation, or anything of the likes. You're going to set that up, and there's some important aspects that you're really going to need for your brooder. First off, you're going to need some type of bedding. We like to use wood shavings here at our homestead. It's really nice. You can kind of just lay a layer on top every week. As they get older, you'll just get higher and higher, and then once they're ready to get out of their brooder, then you can use that as compost following, which is really nice. But you can also use sand, paper towels, or anything else that you would use for bedding. After the bedding, you're going to need to have a water and food dish. You are basically their mama hens, so you need to make sure that they're provided with fresh water and food throughout their whole chick life. And honestly, when they become chickens as well, because they're going to need you, because you're basically taking them in, they're no longer going to survive in the outside world. So you're going to want to make sure to have a nice watering system. You're going to want to start off in a smaller system, and then you can get to a larger one as they do get bigger. And all you have to do when you get your little chicks is dip their nose into the water, and this will teach them all how to drink from it. So you really only have to do it with one chick of your little baby chick flock, and they will teach each other. You also want to make sure that in your food, you're getting a nice baby chick crumble, something that's high in protein. We use Nature Serve chick feed at our homestead, and we love it. It has essential oils inside of it, which helps with the development of your chicken, as well as all of the nutrients and medications that they need to grow into a strong chicken, as you can see from some of our chicks back here. And the final item that you're going to need for your brooder is going to be some sort of heat source. We end up using a heat lamp, and we plug it into an Inkbird, which actually will help regulate it. So when you start off your chicks, you're going to want to start off at around 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Depending on how old you get your chicks, that's usually like first week of your chicks, and then every week after that you can go down by around 5 degrees. Now that your brooder is prepared, you can actually get your chickens and start to add them to your brooder. And this is where you're going to play mama hen a lot, because your chicks aren't really going to know much about the brooder, where they can find the water, the food, or the heat. So you're going to want to make sure to bring them in, show them exactly where the heat source is, and show them where their water is, again by just dipping in their beak into the water. This is most likely the first time that they're actually drinking, because when a baby chick is mailed to you, they're usually only 1 to 2 days old or around there, and they haven't actually had food or water yet, which is totally fine because they're really hardy. As you can tell, they're literally getting shipped in a box to you, and you're going to be the ones to show them how to do that. If you did pick them up at a local mill, Tractor Supply, or another place where they've a little bit older, maybe like a week or two, then they might already know, but you're still going to want to show them how to drink their water. And again, these chicks are going to be really young, pretty small, so you might need to put some marbles along the exterior of the water, or where the water dish is coming from, so they aren't able to drown in that water dish. And it is shown that chicks that are well hydrated are actually less likely to get pasty butt, which can be pretty detrimental to chicks. So make sure that you're giving them enough water and food in order to keep them healthy, growing, and well hydrated during this period of their life, because they're going to be growing a lot and they're going to need you to really support that. You've gone ahead and done step 1, which is preparing your brooder. Step 2 was adding your chicks to the brooder. Step 3 is actually monitoring your chicks. The first couple of hours that you actually get your chicks into the brooder are going to be the most vital time, because this is when you're bringing your chicks into a totally new environment, especially if they were delivered to you by mail or you've hatched them out. You really want to make sure that you're providing the best area for them. It has the heat just at what it needs. So usually, again, at around 95 degrees Fahrenheit, right when you get those chicks in. And then as they get older, you can start to decrease that heat at around 5 degrees per week. Definitely check it out for your chicks. Because they aren't fully feathered out, they really can't retain heat that well. So if they do get wet, they get hypothermia pretty easily. And if they are just in a colder section, they could not live because they aren't able to really keep that heat inside of their body. You're also really going to want to check on them on a daily basis when you go in to add feed and water to make sure that the conditions for them are still set to go. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but there are a few signs that you can really tell if it's too cold or too hot in your brooder. The first one is if they're all huddled up. This usually means that they are way too cold, so you want to make sure that it's a lot warmer in there. We like to use the Inkbird with ours, which will help regulate the temperature and lets you understand what degree it's actually in there, or to get a little thermometer to go on the bottom so you can actually tell what temperature it is inside of your brooder, especially if you're using a heat lamp, which is a little bit harder to actually regulate. If you notice that they're all sprawled out towards the edges of the cage, they're pretty lethargic, they're breathing heavy, this means it's definitely too hot and you're going to want to make sure to cool them down. And the third telltale sign that the temperature is incorrect is if they're getting pasty butt. So if they're well hydrated and they're still getting a pretty large amount of pasty butt, and this is for multiple chicks in there, this could mean that it's either too hot or too cold, and you're definitely going to want to make a change to provide the best environment for your baby chicks. Along with monitoring your chicks, you want to make sure that you're doing daily tasks every single day to take care of those little babies until they're ready to go in with the larger flock. This means they're going to be checking up on them around 1 to 2 times per day in order to fill up their water, fill up their food, resupply them with new bedding. Depending on what bedding type you're using, you might need to do this on a more regular cadence, especially if you do have a lot of chicks. Whereas if you have a smaller flock of chicks and a different type of bedding, you might not have to do this as often. Make sure that the bedding is especially dry right by the water. As we said, we want to make sure that, one, there's not a breeding ground for mold or anything like that around the water. We also want to make sure that our chicks aren't getting wet, because this can cause hypothermia because they aren't able to really regulate that temperature and keep in the heat. You also want to be checking on your chicks, make sure that the temperature is correct. You're still monitoring them to make sure that nobody's sick or too hot, has pasty butt. If they do, then you want to clean that out and start to assess the situation. And you're going to do this on a daily basis until they really are old enough, they're feathered out, or the temperatures are warm enough that you can actually start to bring them outside. This is the last and final step, is when you actually start to integrate them with your current flock, or you actually put them outside into their own coop. So depending on the weather and time of year, you can do this sooner or later. We like to make sure that our baby chicks are around the same size as the rest of our chickens before we actually integrate them in with a flock. And we always watch them, keeping a close eye the first day, 24, 48 hours that we put them in, because there's definitely going to be a pecking order. And if you are able to actually put them in a smaller caged in area inside of the flock, we actually have like a little playpen area. It's fully contained from the other chickens, but they can see each other, they can smell each other, so they start to understand who each other is before we actually release them into the flock. This is a really big chance for your birds to actually meet and greet, and there's definitely always going to be someone that wants to show them who's boss. So you're going to notice that pretty quickly. It's really great if you do have other chickens because they're usually going to teach them the ways, where the food, the water, what it means to go outside, the nesting boxes, all that fun stuff. But if this is the first time that you're having your chickens go into the coop, it is also a really great learning experience for them and a time where you can actually start to train them. And those are the 5 steps for getting chickens. I wish you the best of luck, and we'll see you guys again next time. Bye.